5% down day. Turnaround Tuesday being talked about a lot, given the volume split yesterday. Why don't you trust it?
Well, I don't trust it because at the beginning of the day, typically I would say we have a chance to find a bottom. But I think that the president is really in tweet mode. And when he gets in one of these modes, we kind of have to wait to see when he gets bored of tweeting and moves on to some other things, because he's created a level of uncertainty that would make it so that typically we won't want to come in with both hands and start buying. The tweets, he should knock the tweets off if he wants the Dow to start going up, at least today, because they make you stop and think, well, wait a second. What happens if he tweets, I hate the Chinese even though I love them? And that President Xi's the greatest guy, but I have to crush him? Because his tweets are a little erratic this morning. I mean, they're definitely in favor of the United States. We don't want to disagree. I mean, that's kind of obvious. But I think he's made it so that we got to wait to be able to buy. And he's got to move on and stop tweeting now, maybe take a couple meetings, play some golf. Because, wow, he's really disturbing the zeitgeist of the stock market.
Yeah, more than half a dozen tweets today about how we've rescued the steel industry, how farmers will see the difference made up by the U.S. as their time is now. And then, Jim, this last one about China stimulus, what would happen in his view if the Fed should do a match, to quote him. Some argue that he's now putting the ball in the Fed's court if this thing is truly painful.
Yeah, the market doesn't like that. They don't want one of these things where the Fed... They don't want to hear him telling the Federal Reserve what to do. I mean, we have people who come on air all the time. Rick Santel was talking about shorting the Fed and buying the two, whatever. I mean, we've got to be careful. You don't want the president to pressure the Fed right now. Let the Fed think about what it wants to do with lower inflation. That was the tweet that really hurt me, because I read that and I said, oh, come on, Mr. President. Let's just talk about how don't cut earnings per share, but give us something that says the American company's going to do very well and I'm not worried. Don't talk about the Fed, because all that does is make people feel like that he wants to be a dictator. And we don't need the great dictator. We don't want the Chaplin thing, you know?
Right. Well, doesn't it put him in a position to potentially blame the Fed, though, if the economy slows again?
You mean rather than blaming previous presidents and his great friend, President Xi, who he's trying to rip the face off of? Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't think the president should be already coming up with a strategy about who to blame. I think he really should stick with the idea that well, true, but, you know, it has to be, what, you're going to blame them for the Fed for taking down numbers, Macy's? I mean, you know, he's got to be a little more sophisticated is what I'm saying. I mean, don't blame the Fed yet. Let's see what happens. He should be talking about discounts the Chinese are giving us, but he went right to the Fed. And he's got to stop watching another channel that is really saying it's okay.
Well, what I think is, I mean, I keep coming back to that Wall Street Journal story, guys, where they at least claim that the Chinese perceived concern on the U.S.'s part about the economy because of the president's continued focus on getting lower rates out of the Fed.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of executives out here. Most of them feel like that President Trump is crazy like a fox, so to speak. They are surprised that the Chinese are so naive. I mean, a lot of people were talking. I mean, 3 people said to me, wow, they're putting a tariff on American tequila. Well, you know, it's really hard to make tequila in America when it has to come from Jalisco. So, I mean, a lot of the list was really problematic. And a lot of them are chuckling because, wow, I mean, they're going to stop our eel importation. You know, they just didn't have a really good list. And you start thinking, geez, they really take so little of our stuff. They're really focused on Mandarin oranges. Maybe it's because, like, they speak Mandarin.
I know. But, you know, Carl, I think it goes to this idea that there is still a communication gap between the two sides and truly understanding what it is they want, what it is they need, what it is they can deliver. And that goes to all of the people who are trying to figure out how long this goes on.
There's a lot of reports about an increasing nationalistic tone in their state media. They call this a people's war. There's been one clip that's been mentioned from a TV anchor who talked about the 5,000 years of challenges they've been through. This is nothing different. How many views did it get? 3.3 billion views. Billion views.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. Because they got a big addressable market.
They do.
When it comes
clearly, some people must have watched it a couple of times. But yeah.
And as for the Fed,
what are they going to do? What are they going to not go to Starbucks?
That would be a start. Yeah, I think that would.
Well, but the stock got straight. I mean, maybe the stock should be sold. I mean, they can watch 3 billion times, but what do they buy from us? I mean, we're not Louis Vuitton. They don't even like our luxury goods. They do love LVMH. Let's watch that stuff.
All right, but to your point about Starbucks, Jim, it will be very interesting to see. We're not there in any way in terms of any sort of boycotts at this point. We've talked about it oftentimes. No idea how that would resonate with the population at large in China, whether they'd be willing to give up their Starbucks or not. But you could imagine getting down the road to somewhere like that, can't you?
Yes, look, when you listen to the coverage and you read, it's all about Apple. It's all about how Apple's going to have to price itself out. It's all about how Apple's going to lose China. I mean, it almost sounds like some of the generals in Who Lost China in 1947. I really think that the analysts are kind of out of things that they can say are going to get hurt. But the commentary on Apple is so, let's just say it's so downbeat that you would think that Apple will not sell another phone in China. That is the place. And the fact that the Supreme Court made that decision, that was a long-term issue. But people are really struggling. They want to talk about Apple and they want to talk about Boeing. I remember I told you, ABC, the president was thinking about Apple, Boeing, Caterpillar, trying to understand the concept of the price-weighted Dow, but really thinks the Dow matters. And it's everyone commenting on Apple just is basically saying, cut numbers, Apple, cut numbers, Apple, cut numbers, Apple. Let's wait and see. But that's what people are discussing. And not much more, because they don't want to talk about Yum China. It's not KFC. I mean, maybe Luckin competes with Starbucks on a triple venti cappuccino with skim wet, but there really just aren't enough things for them to boycott.
You're mentioning Apple, JP Morgan, of course, Jim, I think you're referencing this. They estimate that Apple would need to take a 14% price hike on iPhones. This is assuming a 37% gross margin, and they do suggest that there's more pain ahead for the shares. I noticed also JPM cuts Deere today, Jim, to underweight on what they're calling rapidly deteriorating fundamentals in U.S. ag. This is a perfect storm for U.S. farmers, as we have a lot of global oversupply. I mean, Brazil and Argentina, a record production. Right. This is separate from tariffs.
Look, Deere selling at 13 times earnings. They report this week. Probably going to be a disappointing quarter. What can I say? I mean, it's really one of these things where you really have one company. You could argue that Dow DuPont is going to get hurt because they do some ag. We're kind of out of great ag ideas to bet against, but the pressure on Deere is immense. The short position is very large because of all this commentary. Yesterday, stock down very, very badly. Deere has a habit of surprising you to the upside just when you think it's a layup short. Let's see what they say.